Good
fucking
morning.
God
damn it.
Damn it.
So out of sync.
Oh,
How are we going, guys?
Shockingly good. That was shockingly good.
We are good. How are you?
Let's see if this episode we can not have some cheesy pun transition us to the first question. Let's see if we can achieve it for 1 week. Because the listeners are hating that.
You know what? You know what I think of when I see Prantik?
What do you
What?
think of?
Universal Studios.
Oh Jesus! I was gonna say, like size and strength. That's just what I think of when I was.
Goodness sake, man. All right, live on air. Conor is officially quitting the podcast. I repeat, Conor is quitting the podcast. See y'all.
We're in the love triangle, people.
Can't have two sides to a triangle, eh?
Sorry, I didn't think of that way for you, Conor.
Nachos.
Oh, we just had to do it, didn't we? All right, so I've been informed by my my advisor, our manager, our chief, our
Guru.
I don't know what else. What other words can we use? Our guru. What else you got for me, Nick? Someone who advises us. Our mentor, our God, Mr. Prantik, that we should try and condense our podcast a bit more. So hopefully we can get to the first question. So,
Our girlfriends,
guys.
God damn it.
What's up?
Girlfriends.
I said our girlfriends.
Chicks. Random chicks. All right.
All right. Yep. Keep going.
For legal reasons.
Anyways,
only.
so we'll leave legal reasons out of this one today. People listen to podcasts must be like, what the hell are we talking about? Guys, it's an inside joke. Just okay.
All right.
So today we're talking about strength training and does it help hypertrophy? How does it hurt it? How's it good? All the ins and outs. So firstly, I'll quickly ask for a quick definition, as you guys see it, of both strength and size. So Mr. Prantik, my mentor, and all those things we said before.
The definition of strength and size himself.
Coffee.
I like that.
Okay. So definition of strength and size. Let me put it like this. The spontaneous gain of power over time with practice is strength.
That was amazing. That was so good.
Oh.
If that's not the definition, it should be now.
Kids, listen to us. Write it down. Kids,
Yeah.
write it down. Pen it.
I guarantee I'll go on Google and I'll say, okay, Google, what's the definition of strength? And it won't be as good as that. No chance.
Put this on our calendar.
I guarantee I'll forget this.
I think we should.
No,
this is National
on the
Strength Day.
on the 27th of September, Prantik just came up with the definition. All right, National
history
Strength
books.
Day.
National
Put this
Tick.
in
He's already
history books.
he's done pro tenacious as well. So he's just got everything coming through now.
It's brain that's
So we've got
working.
strength. I'm not going to lie, Prantik, you've done strength. For size, you've got huge pressure now. You've really
size.
had to stand for yourself.
Ooh, huge pressure.
Okay, here we go. The incremental gain in muscle mass because of the spontaneous increase in strength results in size development, which is actually the addition of new layer of muscle tissue in the form of protein bundles is size gain.
I want to sleep on a pillow made of your voice.
Mayonnaise.
Oh man.
That was good.
Okay. No, that was really good, man. So do I even have to give a definition of like my interpretation of it? That was just beautiful. I'm just going to be put to shit now. I mean, look, to be honest, like to touch on something a little bit more than what Prantik was saying in terms of strength, another way we can put it is just the improvement of aspects within your nervous system, such as the ability to contract more muscle fibers or motor units, as we may call it. Another easy way of saying, what is strength training is just the amount of resistance that we use during your movement. If you actually refer to our intensity guidelines on our YouTube page, you will actually see some more in-depth definition Conor goes through about absolute and relative. He might talk about this now. It's up to him. But in terms of muscle size, hypertrophy, that's what we call it. That's just the increase in size of the cells that translates to, muscle tissue and things like that, which is generally characterized by higher volumes of training. That's what I'm gonna say.
Nice.
I'm going to keep it so simple. So when we talk about size today, we're going to literally talk about, muscles getting bigger. And when we're talking about strength, we're talking about the ability to just do more stuff in terms of output. So, there are little sneaks in the cracks. So for example, if you can deadlift 200 kilos and you can rack pull 220 because it's potentially an easier movement, I don't think you've gotten stronger. You just chose some better lifts. But imagine that 200 goes to 250, that's strength. So the ability to do more in the same set of circumstances.
Now, guys,
so we'll keep it simple for us.
Before I forget,
back on.
I wanted this to be a dedicated episode, but I feel like that this question can come in through this episode. So as we progress through the episode, remind me to bring in all those TENS units, the work of electrodes on your placement on your body, and then using that to gain explosive strength and stuff. I can also pull up my strength unit that is sitting right here, and I can show it to the audience from YouTube as well what I'm talking about. But remind me to bring those in, or if you just want to talk about it now, I don't mind.
The strength unit? Why would you bring your Viagra on the show?
No, it's just not Viagra that I'm talking about. It's other stuff as well in there, much more powerful. You know what I mean.
People use it for pumps.
Was that a wink? Was that a wink? I'm sorry,
that was
YouTube
a wink.
listeners, but that was not a wink. His nose kind of like.
So that's a little bit of a nose job, if you know what I mean.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Conor, go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, so we're really trying to, with the podcast now, we're paying attention to not jumping too far ahead in terms of, cover your simple bases and you can expand later versus doing the complex stuff first and then having a double back on the simple stuff and whatnot. So with these next few questions, guys, we'll try and take them one at a time. So does an increase in strength mean an increase in size and vice versa? What are your guys' thoughts?
Nice question.
Does an increase in strength mean an increase in size, vice versa? I mean, maybe you can make an argument for it. Say you take a set of 5 to 8, which can be considered strength, which is great for those what I mentioned before, those fast twitch fibers. But it's it's also good for those training lower volumes. So people that are training strength and training in lower volumes, it's just a good way to potentiate a future phase for hypertrophy.
And by volumes, Nick, sorry to cut you off, but by volumes, you're referring to reps in particular?
I'm talking about total work capacity, so sets and reps over the course of the weeks. Yeah, so that's what I mean by that when I mean a volume, guys, sets times reps. But I will say, you guys have to admit, when you're thinking about those barbell lifts, your deadlifts, your bent over rows and stuff like that, your erectors get pretty damn huge, when you're lifting substantial amounts. So, can you make a case of heavier lifting, works for muscle gain, for sure. You check out those power lifters that have just got huge erectors, huge traps and things like that. They all come and built, from those type of movements. So that's why I kind of said maybe. I mean, you can make a case for it, but I think the main point that I really want to get across is just what strength training can do for future phases of hypertrophy. That's basically,
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. How about you, Prantik? Do you think it's a guarantee for size increase?
I feel like Nick has already summed it up. Sorry, but I feel like Nick has already done the big work. All I want to add is there's also one more thing that needs to be kept in mind if you really want to go down that path of does increase in strength mean increase in size. The proper execution of the proper form of the exercise is also very necessary. You might end up gaining strength, and then you might not end up getting unsymmetrical size on both sides. So I've seen people do that, and then their body balances falls out of balance on the left hand side and the right hand side. Uh, Totally uh, look a little bit different from a muscle symmetry point of view. This I'm talking about, especially round muscle bellies, which from aesthetic point of view looks bad. You might have a lot of strength, you might be able to lift, but then you lift, what is the point of lifting when your left hand side falls weak and falls short of your right hand side? So kind of it does increase your size, but if you're doing it wrong, then there will be unproportional increase in size, which might lead to cumulative negative impact. Even though you are moving towards a positive strength gain, you might have a negative aesthetic impact or muscle imbalance in your body.
So with that imbalancing, it kind of ties to another thing that I think we should clarify as well. There can be a difference between revealing the strength you've got versus developing new strength. So imagine like you're at a play, right, and they unveil the curtains. So imagine like revealing your strength is doing that. So the pulling back of the curtains is being like good at the skill, or making sure there's not a bunch of like lingering fatigue. Basically getting rid of all things that's going to cock block you. The actual developing strength is actually making the whole stage bigger. So when you reveal, it's a bigger overall thing. So I think with like the, different side to side muscle imbalances and stuff like that, if you're just chasing a particular lift just to get the number up, that would be like a mechanism of revealing strength. But back to the question of does an increase in size mean an increase in strength? Nearly 100% of the time, does an increase in strength mean an increase in size? That's not as likely, believe it or not. So we've got to look at the components of developing strength and developing size. So imagine there's different mechanisms for increasing both, and some carry over, and some like help both, and some are just individual to the other. So with the size thing, the mechanisms of hypertrophy and stuff like that, we know we've got like tension, we've got like damage, we've got metabolic stress, we've got like, and if you want to go even further out, we've got stuff like sarcoplasmic fullness, like the whole reticulum getting bigger. So basically you store more. That'll make the muscle bigger. But that's so much, is only part of the equation. Now with strength, you can subcategorize it in a million different ways. But for big picture, and we'll even like put technique under neurological, even though it's not 100% factual. You got the neurological side of things, and you got the muscle side of things. So basically how much muscle you've got and how do you use it, you can basically look at that. So there'll be the two parts that will come to the party in your brain, your nervous system, your mind, all come to the party to reveal and all that stuff. So some of these neurological things that make you better at getting like the lift up don't actually increase your size. But if you increase your size and you're still running at like 50% efficiency or whatever, then the equation goes up. So you're able to develop more strength. That's like one of the reasons why we've got weight classes as well. Like size matters, or else, there'd be just a flat weight class, like the 180 kilo half Thor would just compete against, this 56-year-old chick would be an issue. Yeah, imagine that, right? And some like, deadlift comp. So that's one of the reasons. So it's nearly a guarantee for size to increase strength, but other way around, it could be a few things. It could be right, but it could be wrong.
Could we also say, if you're comparing a novice and an advanced athlete, you're looking, for example, you take a novice person, they gain so much strength, like crazy amounts of strength. I don't know I'm not going to throw in
strength versus time.
But yeah, like, you'd say you gain 20, 30%. I'm just throwing random percentages here, but, you throw these high percentages of this is what you increase in strength. How much of that is really muscle mass? Probably not as much as you would say you take a really advanced person, right? Would you say, mesocycle after mesocycle after mesocycle, they start to notice their lifts are going up? There's a good chance that they're increasing in size as well, especially at the elite end.
So I think you got to like with that equation of, okay, you're stronger, and we've got those two facets. So if the neurological side is stagnant and you've gotten stronger, then, it must be this side coming up, which is the hypertrophy side of things, like your muscle size going up. Versus, I guess, like if there was more that made some technique adjustments, they were really neurologically inefficient beforehand, they could have increased that to increase the size. So I think with, people look at beginners and advanced, and it's a great way of thinking of it. But people also talk about like training age. But I think a handy thing might be your neurological leaks of sorts. So like how much are you missing from your potential? Now, obviously a beginner that's never touched some of these lifts has got a huge gap there. But sometimes certain advanced people do as well. And sometimes, these beginners pick it up really quickly. They've got a good sport background. And there's just a degree of it you can improve. And there's some people that have just gotten through just via muscle, like a bit like Ronnie Coleman's, like I love Ronnie Coleman, but like Ronnie Coleman's deadlift, like 800.
Ain't nothing but a peanut.
That was muscle that did that, There's neurological kilos that were left on the table for what Ronnie could have done, which is, by the way, terrifying. Like, holy crap, what could have Ronnie done, right? But yeah, it's all part of it. So I think if you look at the individual and like, okay, what was their level beforehand of the neurological side of things? What is it after? If there's an increase there, then maybe. But if there isn't, then 100%. I know it's not an easy black and white answer, but it'll help you figure it out every time.
But there's also genetics involved in this. Strength also comes back from what gene is actually flowing. For example, African American gene has that tendency of putting on muscle very easily without effort because it's probably flowing in through the DNAs. Because the species of African Americans or Africans have through ages evolved in such a way that they are accustomed to the landform and then muscle gain or strength gain over a short period of time.
You adapt to the environments. Yeah, so you could say like, there'd be examples in like African population or whatever population in the world. It's not like magic of a country degree, it's magic of the environment over time.
Exactly.
So if you're to track if you're to run long distances for basic necessities, run away from a lion, I know there's huge stereotypes around, I'm going to get cancelled, whatever, then maybe you adapt to it. And if you're like in freaking Antarctica, you can have certain other adaptations to make you better at the cold. But then you look at the African American things, it's obviously a bit sad, look at like the slavery thing. As sad as it was 3 tiers. I don't know if we're discussing this. There's almost 3 tiers of what can make them potentially genetically quite good. So imagine you're over there and you chose potentially slaves that would have, okay, you're like the better skilled slaves in the terms of like you got better potential. Like physically, you're not going to get sick and die. And then that's one tier that's going to like separate the good from the bad. Then you've got to survive the trip over. That's like a second step. But then like you're over there and people like are purchasing people, which is disgusting, right? But like you're going to choose a better one. So you've almost got 3 levels of elimination to get something better. But it's like environment. Like it's not racist.
It is exactly correct. And you're not saying something wrong or something racial. But I feel like
walk on eggshells. So
I feel you're 100% correct because that was the reason why slavery existed, because of their skeletal form or their muscular form or their form that the species itself has developed over.
So species, let's say group.
Let's say I'm like that category of Homo sapiens. Let's put it in scientific form. That category of Homo sapiens have developed because of their change in landmass or change in landform over the period of time and adaptation of that that group of Homo sapiens over evolution period has given them.
The interesting thing, even like genetics and stuff like that for your strength, it would still be the genetics that like funnel up, in the terms of the twigs to the branches to the the chunk of the tree. It all would funnel up into the big subcategories of muscle mass and like the neurological technique, blah, blah, side of things. It'll still be factors affecting those. That makes sense. Like it's not like, okay, 1, 2, and then genetics. It'd be the genetics and how it helps those. That makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sounds
cool.
good.
Sounds nice.
Right,
I like how we'll try and stay on topic and like not discuss the slightest difference between the questions, and then boom, we go like right off to left field, All right. So Nick, you were saying before.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll tie it to you because you were saying before that you're more interested in talking about does it help. So, Nick, how do you believe strength training helps size training? Or something like that.
Vice versa.
Look, I'll keep this actually quite simple. So, Prantik actually mentioned this at the beginning, which I thoroughly believe. So, how do we think size? How do we think it helps size training? Sorry. Prantik mentioned at the beginning that gaining muscle increases one's potential to be stronger. Okay, so very well put. It's a very textbook
Scientific
answer, but if you look in any kind of physiology like textbook, they actually kind of mention that quite a bit. But that's like I said to you before, you know, like say your goal is, you know, size, and you're training that 5, 10, 15, 20 plus range. Like those are the kind of rep ranges that I'm getting at here. And literally from mesocycle to mesocycle to mesocycle, if those lifts are going up, look, there is a good chance you're getting, you know, stronger and adding, you know, size. So
like I think it's a bit of chicken and egg there, isn't there? Because like you could say, I've been focusing on gaining size and now my lifts have went up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know it sounds like really like minutia, right? But it's a bit chicken and the egg, isn't it? Oh, not really. But they kind of both are going up. So like, what the hell? Because like usually in science, right, we try and like isolate all variables. So we can like have one variable that's like, you know, changing, and we can see if that's the thing that's causing an effect.
The
that's
chicken
like
and the egg reference that Conor you just mentioned, it kind of that kind of is visible in case of size and strength gain simultaneously only on a microscopic level or on the level of a biological gain point of view. By that I mean like you won't noticeably able to see a huge amount of difference in size in 1 week, but you will be able to see the lift. So a person can progress from lifting 10 pounds. This is a person who has never been to the gym, who's lifting progress from 10 pounds to 20 pounds. He would be able to do that for like 12 reps. If I'm mentioning that failure rep range that he or she has achieved on a Monday of September first week of September on a Monday, he or she has lifted 10 pounds for 12 reps. And on the second week of Monday, he or she is lifting that same 10 pounds for 12 reps successfully, and then progressing onto lifting at 20 pounds as well. So that strength gain is visible. At the same time, on a microscopic level, that gain in muscle tissue, extra addition of muscle tissue is visible from a microscopic level. If you're focusing down on probably they're doing a bicep exercise. If you're focusing down on the bicep and you're looking through a microscope, you'll see addition of new tissues. So that kind of is like, which came first? Is the tissue add-on first, or was the strength gain first? But from a perspective of just looking at the person physically from the outside without going into the body, you're just saying, okay, strength has gone up radically. But then the explosive muscle gain comes out in a few weeks, where you see that t-shirt stretching, bicep pumping, blood coursing, veins.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, I'll let you carry on, Nick. So, yeah, does strength training itself increase size? Yeah.
No, that's pretty much all I want to say about that. But I guess, you know, if you're going to look at compare like examples, take a look at literally a powerlifter versus a bodybuilder. You know, some bodybuilders have, you know, more and larger amounts of muscle tissue, right? But say you take, you know, like think of Sebastian Oro, for example. I don't know if you've seen his legs, but like, yeah, they might be like, you know, staunch in real life. I don't know, on Instagram. Maybe it's because he's standing around like other people that just have like that are more staunch than him. But his legs don't look, you know, massively like impressive, but like yet he can squat 400 kilos. You know what I mean? So, you know, this guy is just incredibly strong. Doesn't have as much muscle tissue as comparison to somebody that has larger amounts of muscle tissue, but isn't quite as strong as them. So they're like, yeah, like what do you think about that? I'm curious what your.
I think I just want to quickly clarify something. You're right, but just also because we mentioned Sebastian and some powerlifters, we've got to almost separate like equipped lifters for now, because that's almost like a different subcategory. As like knee wraps in a sense are almost like fake quads. So in a weird way, it's like part of the quad scenario. You know what I mean? So, but it's not the whole thing. So I'm not like discrediting the whole thing, because there's a good chance even without the wraps, Sebastian will be stronger than someone with bigger legs anyway. So I'm not trying to chuck out your whole argument, but there's different parts. So then you could argue, well, if we're still in the muscle sense of things, because usually he's flexing his quads, how do his glutes and lower back look compared to these other not as strong
Probably
as
have a
squats. Maybe
huge
it's more
ass,
developed
man.
there. Maybe he does, but then maybe it's like all the other categories, in terms of his neurological technique gap is just so much smaller than the others.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's capitalized on every like part of like recruiting your muscle, incorporating the technique with it, and everything that's involved in that to make it better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. There's also Larry Wheels if you want to follow up on muscle and then strength going hand in hand. Larry Wheels does these crazy lifts, and he's muscular as well.
Yeah, he's pretty impressive. Actually, speaking of genetics, man, I never seen something so depressing. So you know how sometimes you'll see people like, and they're like a 400 kilo deadlifter or whatever, and you're like, okay, they would have started somewhere, and because some people have improved more across their career, which I think is a good sign of training intelligence. Some people were just further at the start. His lifts 1 year into training at 19 years old are just like so much more than I can ever expect to do in my life if I nail everything about it and probably jump on the juice. Like all that there.
What juice is this? Is this celery juice or pineapple?
Yeah, like orange Trembolona juice,
Oh, okay. Tremboloni Coloni. That's what he's doing.
Tremboloni Coloni. Prantik, do you believe some like the lower rep ranges, the strength kind of work, do you think that helps like your size training, like doing a little bit of that here and there? I know you mentioned Josh back in the day, he'd kind of have some like at least 6 reps or maybe something like that towards the end of his periodization model and stuff like that.
12, if I correctly remember, it's 12, 10, 8, 6, 4-week periodization. Cool. So yeah, it definitely does help, man. When you're especially building up to, when you have a program which you're following, it definitely works because you're coming from that high rep range to a lower rep range, and by the time you've already hit that lower rep range, your power has like doubled. Like, trust me, doubled. If you're using PEDs or if you're enhanced or dehanced, let's put it that way. If you're enhanced, you'll see the same proportional gain as when you're dehanced. I'm just talking about the difference in weights here because the failure tendencies will differ in both cases, because when you're enhanced, you'll fail a little bit lesser, and when you're dehanced, you'll fail a little bit earlier. But it also depends from person to person. This is completely my perspective because it also depends on height, weight, because the thing that Nick can squat or deadlift, I won't be able to do it. Probably that would be my highest because of the height or weight advantage that he has over me. His bones are a little bit longer.
I'm smiling. Sorry, you're laughing. I was interrupting. I'm smiling because I was thinking we mentioned like slavery and like African Americans, and that's probably me less contentious than talking about the argument of shorter versus longer lifters. There's such a debate there.
So that's what I say. That's what I was saying. Like, it has to do also with the body form. Some people have wider shoulders, so the grip is different in that case. Josh can squat 300, and he can also deadlift 300. So those are like massive numbers. On a very good day, Josh has deadlifted 300 for 10 or 12. That is intense. That is like madness. If I try to do that, I'll probably die. Probably not in this life. Next life, I'll try. But you see, but Nick was very close to that number as well. I remember Nick's best lift was 250 for 6, I guess. Nick, was it? Or 2?
What the fuck?
I don't remember.
Yep. Just say yep.
Yeah, sure.
I'll take it.
I know your number was 220 for sure. 220 was your last number. I know that for sure.
Now the numbers just keep dropping. Go back up.
No. It's on the podcast. It's happened. That's as good as like a IPF white lighter.
Yeah.
No, I mean, man. What was it? What was the number? Highest number?
255 for 2 years ago.
Yeah, and 220 was for 6 or something? 6 or 8?
230 for 4.
230 for 4, yeah. The one that I probably remember what you did high reps was 230 or 220 where Conor whispered something in your ears and you were like...
That was 255.
Okay.
So
that was for 1. Okay.
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about, Prantik. There was a lift at Kringle, Nick.
Uh-huh.
We're doing a deadlift there, and it was like, I think it was like 4 rep range.
Oh.
Yeah, lower
Oh,
twos.
that was 215, I think.
Mm-hmm. And remember
Yeah.
my lift at my squad at Glen Waverley, Connor? That night
Yeah, I
train.
do.
we did.
Okay, guys.
We don't have a video of that.
I do have
Guys,
a video of
we
that.
actually do. As for the strength trainers, in case you're doing things, after a while, a 2.5 kilo PR is huge. I mean, the only thing that make Nick happier than his 255 deadlift is a 257.5 kilo deadlift, or a 260 even. A 5 kilo PR, that's awesome, man. So meanwhile, Prantik over here, only done 140 before, doesn't do a warm-up, or like he's been doing warming up, of course, but doesn't do anything between and jumps immediately to 170 kilos.
Yeah.
He only done 140.
Did I pull it off? I don't remember. I think I pulled one off or something. I
You
died.
did too.
Look,
You
just
weren't,
take it. It's on
wasn't
the
as deep as
podcast.
other
Just
ones,
take it.
but yeah.
I died.
Yeah. It's on the podcast. It's a good lift, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I've got a 9-inch something, you know. Podcast approved.
Shit.
Right. So, yeah, do we think it helps size training? So my thoughts on it. So obviously, getting bigger will help your strength outcomes, but I might even subcategorize it to more of that neurological side of things. So for the audience, that might mean, you're good at moving heavy weights. You recruit your high threshold motor units, all the muscle fibers contract, and they contract hard, and they contract with a degree of velocity and speed. You're good at the movement. You're well practiced at it. Doing that has a few characteristics of it. It means when you come back to size training, you can now recruit these muscles quickly, efficiently, and aggressively. So let's say you're doing a set of 8 on your size training. That neurological thing would basically mean I grabbed as many fibers as I could because I needed to. Now when you're trying to do the hypertrophy, you're training more fibers. You're training everything there to a degree, Obviously, if you change the lifts, certain things change, but in terms of the adaptations there. Another thing is, if you're doing neurological stuff like that, one of the magic things is if you don't do stuff for a while, you get resensitized. What that means is you can benefit at lower thresholds. So basically, if you need to do a bunch of metabolic work, okay, a bunch of sets, high reps, really push yourself beforehand to see a response, doing neurological stuff where you're not doing that can maintain the muscle mass, but when you come back to that, you don't need to do as much, just like a newbie lifter wouldn't need to do as much. So you get that benefit too of resensitization, and then it transfers over. So you're more efficient, you can grab more, you can do this and that. You can often improve technique there as well. But then when you come back to that, you also get the new sensitive stimulus that you can progress higher and higher and higher. Because if you're going to progress from 15 to 20 sets to 25, you're probably already trading potentially at that stage anyway. Versus you've got many gaps of just improving, more work potentially, and I'm still not overtraining. That makes sense?
Very nice.
Thank you. All right, so next question was, what are some of the con sides of doing strength training for hypertrophy? Do you guys have any thoughts there? Why don't
you go first?
Me? I was just speaking for ages, I can give it a crack though.
Uno reverse.
Right. Again, the main factor for injury and stuff like that is potentially overuse and bad technique. But in its nature, it seems that powerlifters, for example, get twice the amount of injuries that bodybuilders get. So there is a degree of inherent danger that is there at higher intensities. Basically, you got less of a gap there potentially. Another factor is that each bit of powerlifting training, as much as I was saying about resensitizing and not doing stuff for a while, each part of your non-size training is not giving you size. So there's a degree if you potentiate for other things, but you're also not catalyzing on the one thing you want at a time. And that's just usually an issue of this variation in general. But so what that might mean is you're basically doing stuff that's just not going to progress you forward. So that training itself, it's just time taken away of your calendar year that you could be gaining size. That makes sense. So we've got the injury factors. We've got the fact that something called the stimulus to fatigue ratio. So how much hypertrophy on the side of things we'll refer to for this one, adaptations you get versus how fatiguing they are, is usually at a bit of a disconnect. You might notice you just feel wiped after a hard deadlift. How much does a hard set deadlift potentially gas you out? versus just doing multiple, potentially more effective, more isolated lifts on other things that you can usually recover from. That's because the systemic demands, basically how it affects your whole systems in general, can be quite hard. And then the issue with like that in itself is the more time you're more systemically tired, fatigued, all those things, the less you can recover from all the peripheral little muscles. So if you're overall just cooked in a general sense, then you're not going to be able to do as much effort in the gym because you're cooked, but then you actually can't recover as much from your bicep curls and the rest outside of the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a few things that come to mind. I'm sure there's more for why it can hurt it. Oh, another thing actually, sorry, quickly add, often when we're trying to gain size, we're trying to put the most amount of stress on the muscle tissues that we can. So you're really trying to bias, like for example, you're trying to squat for quads, you're really trying to put as much tension and the rest through your quads and arguably less amounts to your other muscles or the hip extensors and less of your ligaments and tendons from the knee, for example. But when you're training for for strength, potentially you'll use a rebound or something like that, which is like a loss of tension, or you're trying to distribute the weight across multiple areas, which at that stage you're like, okay, is it enough quad to really, get you to gain size in terms of the tension there? Maybe, kind of depends where you're at. Is there enough for glutes and lower back? Yeah, kind of depends where you're at. But as you're more advanced, it's probably just not enough per individual thing. I mean, it can help, but how much would it help versus a more quad-based dominant thing versus, what's the maximum amount I can lift? Because part of that lift is using momentum to a degree, safely. And a bunch of other things that isn't just recruit the most amount of attention on the tissue and stress on the tissue. Arguably, we're trying to only place as much stress on the tissue as we need. Make sense?
Sensible?
Sensible. All right. I'm sure there's other things. Nick, how do you think strength training can negatively affect your size training or your hypertrophy goals?
Well, okay. So just for the viewers out there, I'll just kind of basically kind of everything Conor said, is pretty much what I was going to say, but I'll just kind of explain this to the viewers out there too. So, say if you're looking, if you can lift squats at 100 kilos, like that's your 1 RM, right? And 85% of that, is 85 kilos. Now, if you start training squats in between 85 and 100 kilos, right? I've seen many trainers, for example, at our gym, we're looking at someone, we're looking at this person knowing full well, okay, we've seen this person lift 100 kilos before, and then all of a sudden the trainer is now getting them to do 85, 90 kilos all the damn time, right? Like literally, that's just the base of their, training program. They're just trying to smash them out, trying to get them to lift as heavy as they can, get them as close to that 1 RM as possible, right? And then when you're talking to that person after, how was your session? Yeah, the goal right now is to add on muscle and stuff like that. You're like, ugh, right? Understand one thing. Lifting over 85% of your muscle, 1 RM, yes, it can grow muscle, but like Conor said, how efficient is that set? We got to look at the fatigue accumulated and, injuries and all that occur. Think about the stress on your joints. Think about all your connective tissue. So, there is a risk of injury when your goal is purely hypertrophy and you're trying to lift literally 85% and higher. Okay. So, those exercises, like you said, squats, rows, deadlifts, yeah, they're better. I would say they're better suited towards the lower rep ranges. People that are doing deadlifts in the 12, 15 rep range, the fuck, that's it can be pretty grueling.
They're only doing one set of that.
They're only doing one set of that. But you got to then ask the question, okay, if your goal is hypertrophy and you are doing deadlifts or something like that, is there a better exercise to do? Is for whatever the purpose is that you're training, if you're doing squats, okay, yes, it's so fatiguing. If you're doing low bar squats, high bar squats, it is so fatiguing. Is there a better exercise suited towards your quads or something like that? So it really depends. If you're just one of those people that love and just swear by those lifts, like I just want to do these lifts because it literally gets me in the gym. Okay, you there's a trade-off. Okay, so you got to understand. All right, well, if I am going to do those lifts, then I might need to I need to understand the amount of fatigue that this is going to do, and it might impact my later exercises. So you got to then be really good at programming in the sense that you're just not completely fucking yourself up or adding too much fatigue, too much stress, and therefore increasing the risk of injury. So, like I said, if you are one of those, yes, it can work. Lifting 85%, of your 1RM, it does grow muscle, but there is, a trade-off to it. There is, all that fatigue added to it. So, yes, in my opinion, for sure, it does hurt hypertrophy if that's your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how babies are made. That was amazing.
Love it.
Nice.
Prantik, have you seen people that, trying to gain like maximal size and they're arguably too concerned with certain strength things?
Okay. Let me start off by the definition in the dictionary of hypertrophy. Hypertrophy
it's just under focus.
says that the enlargement of an organ or tissue from the increase in size of its cells. Okay.
That's what I said at the beginning, you prick.
I've read that.
I've read that.
So, increases tissue size. So let's talk about it from Hani Rambod's point of view. FST7, the fascia stretch training, where he's trying to stretch the fascia under your skin. For those people who don't know what fascia is, when you cut a chicken breast, you'll see a thin white film. That is fascia. That's a little thin film of muscles, tissue that's separating your muscle bellies from your skin. So fascia is a very thin skin piece, and that can be very thin tissue piece, and that can be stretched, and that stretches with the growth in the muscle. So the fascia here increases with. So now coming back to what Conor just asked me with low rep training. Are you talking about, Conor? Right? Low rep.
Mm-hmm.
Low rep.
Yeah, how can I hurt it? Yeah.
How can you injure it? Yes, you can. You are actually. I'm talking about injury from a positive perspective now. This you're actually injuring your fascia every day. But if you're really trying to overball it with progressive training, means injury to your tissue. So the new tissue adds on and you grow. But now if you overballing it, like something, let's bring in ego lifting at this point, when you're trying to just lift beyond your beyond what your muscle can handle, well, that's when bicep tears and stuff happens. You're like in the hurt zone, and this zone is very hard because once you hurt it, you'll not be able to return back to that normal stature of your bicep that you already had once. Now it's medically possible to reinsert the bicep into the bone and stuff, but what naturally has formed once cannot be replaced by surgery or something. So yes, it does hurt. Even if you're doing lower rep range at a very higher weight, you can hurt yourself without even knowing. Your bicep will just snap. I've seen these horrific videos of people just doing strict curls and then snap goes their bicep. They have probably lifted. They're probably a very big bodybuilder. They're very big weight movers, but the body functions in a different form altogether. So even if at a lower rep range of a very heavy weight, there goes your bicep. So,
FST7 though, that's more high rep range, isn't it?
Yeah. FST7 is super high rep range, but doesn't involve really like super heavy weights.
Yeah,
it just involves the technique.
Yeah,
they do like 7 sets with 30 seconds rest. It's like a metabolic pump thing.
Yeah.
So I think one of the key takeaways from Prantik's thing is micro tears, not macro tears, peeps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Okay.
Write it down.
Guys, just I think I should jump in here because it might hurt us. So I've written the third last question. I think we should answer that last. It probably makes more sense. So we'll skip to what can bodybuilders learn from powerlifters?
That's a good one. I like that.
I know Nick's got experience with both. Jump on.
Yeah. Look, just Connor's pretty much, I'm pretty sure you've said this throughout the entire thing, but, neurological training, isn't necessarily always just strength-based. It can improve strength, but, look at it like this. Everything that we gain from a neurological perspective can carry you over to the hypertrophy metabolic phase. So this is what bodybuilders can learn from powerlifters. When bodybuilders, like let's say, for example, need a deload, strength phases can come in, right, and help potentiate those muscle gains, going forward. So those, like, think of like all year round, you're doing hypertrophy after hypertrophy. You're just trying to smash like so much volume of work, right? When we need to take a little step back from volume and incorporating more neurological type training, that can like really, like, I feel like I'm just going to repeat myself right now because I just already said it. So, like I said, like it just, improvements in strength really, like I said, carry over to hypertrophy phases. So I don't really need to say anything more than that. Like that's just my main point.
Sweet. Prantik, do you ever see any powerlifters out there and you're like, oh, there's certain things as like you're a bodybuilder, like, oh, maybe I should think of that. Maybe that'll help me in some sense. Maybe not in the exact same way, but certain principles or things they do, maybe that'll apply to my size training. You ever thought of that?
We all know a bodybuilder who has turned into a powerlifter. Sort of stuff like Larry Wheels was this guy who used to be a bodybuilder and then he's turned into powerlifter. The other way around also has happened where powerlifters have turned into bodybuilders. So I think it's definitely possible that there's a key takeaway for each of these groups from intermingling with each other. The type of training that powerlifters do that should actually inspire bodybuilders, as well as the short burst of energy or the 1 RM, as Nick was mentioned before, reaching that 1 RM and hitting your PR. That can be incorporated in bodybuilding as well, and that can be one thing that bodybuilders can take away from powerlifters. And on the same way, powerlifters can also take away something from the bodybuilder is the set range. I mean,
periodization.
Yes, exactly. Periodization. It can be now you see both these sports have developed hand in hand. It was not as prominent as it is nowadays before when it evolved. The first thing that came in was bodybuilding, which is just display because of powerlifting, your body looked nicer. Because you're moving more weights, you're adding on more muscle, and your body look nicer. So both these sports were hand in hand. So they're always learning from each other. Both these sports are always learning from each other, and they are trying to get a growth. And then there is CrossFit. So both these are going hand in hand, and I feel like they're learning from each other and developing every day.
I will say it too. Like if you're a bodybuilder, and you require improvements, for example, during heavier loads, like maintaining execution during heavier loads, I think it's really important for them to go through neurological training because that definitely comes in handy to help them, as their training progresses and they are, lifting heavier. So if they're not used to lifting heavier, definitely going through like, strength phases, getting stronger and things like that, to then go into a hypertrophy phase again will certainly help with like execution for sure.
Yeah, I think I've covered some of the strength for size things, but as like again, you can't speak. I'm going to group categorize people, but obviously there's powerlifters that I'm about to like credit that are dumb and don't do it, and the good bodybuilders that do some of the stuff that are good and aren't idiots. So I'm going to use the stereotypes of like each as kind of trends. So I think overall, you see powerlifters in general are very concerned with their technique. Again, there's exceptions for both, and bodybuilders are really keen on technique. But overall, there's definitely like, okay, we really care about technique here in the powerlifting world. And I think bodybuilders should definitely take some of that. Now, how their technique and execution, the rest, it'll probably look different. But in terms of putting it at like, high on the pedestal, I think it's something they can learn from. You've also got just, powerlifters usually have like goals, in terms of like, okay, I want to increase my lifts, my totals by like IPF Worlds, this time next year. And, bodybuilders, we want to gain size, but as Prantik was saying ages ago, sometimes like the small gains of size can be hard to see. And at least, sometimes what bodybuilders do,
goals.
they'll go through like a whole off season. They'll cut down like, they're comparing if I gain size. Well, it's off season, I might just be fuller, I might just have more fat. And they go all the way to the next year and they look exactly the same. Like, wouldn't it be handy if you could do certain things that would tell you weren't on the right track earlier? And sometimes those quantifiable goals are it. Now, again, it might not be a 1RM squat. Maybe it's like a different lift. Like, okay, if I'm really trying to guarantee my quads are grown, maybe it's like, okay, I improve my pendulum squat or my hack squat or something like that, my like high bar heel elevated squat. Yeah, really quad dominant squat, for example, to make sure, really sure. In the slightly higher rep range, particularly for multiple sets, even just your leg extension has just went up across multiple sets. It can give you those clues before the end of like your contest prep. I'm like, oh crap, look the same as last year. And I think the other part is, bodybuilders can be good at, so you might consider programming. That might be how the variables of training look across the week. A lot of bodybuilders are quite good at that. But how it varies across the whole year is something that overall they are not good at, especially compared to powerlifters. Like powerlifters will have, you can categorize more than this, but at the very minimum, they'll say like, okay, I might be trying to gain size, strength, and peak. Like they might do those three. Whereas bodybuilders like, bulk and cut nutritionally, that's a bit of like variation, but how's my training change across the year? Do you have like different goals at each stages and stuff like that? So within the week, that can be quite good. Yeah, okay, organizing the perfect frequency, the perfect volume for this week. But but how does it translate to, the upcoming weeks in a mesocycle? So mesocycle is a collection of weeks, Rachel. And then across the year, like months and months and months across, how does that look and why should I change it and this and that? And sometimes the powerlifters are really good with that. Deloads. Yeah, that's, I'll live with it. They deload. Bodybuilders don't.
I mean, for me, like, look, what powerlifters can learn from bodybuilders. Look, I'm really gonna go from experience of what I've seen. I could be completely wrong. So for the powerlifting community, like, I apologize if I'm offending anyone here, but I'm gonna go for more the psychological route. So, have you two ever heard of the inverted U theory?
No.
Okay, so this is a theory. Basically, it's about arousal and performance, right? So, low arousal means low performance. Moderate arousal is actually high performance. So you're looking at an inverted U, and then you got high arousal again is low performance. Okay, now in the powerlifting community, I remember that I think it was who said it. It might have been Ed Cohen. I can't remember.
He's a chiller, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah, he's an absolute chiller. Like somebody like was getting ready for their whichever lift it was during their powerlifting meet, but they were screaming, yelling, right? And you think of powerlifters, right? They're just trying to get as pumped up as possible, right? There's an optimal point, right? There, and like I said, there is that moderate range, but it is obviously dependent on the individual. There's some people that just take it so far, right, that their performance literally drops. Now, I think this person asked Ed Cohen, what do you think I could have done better? And he's just said, maybe don't make all those noises and sounds and revving yourself up, and maybe you could have done just a little bit better. That is something I would say that powerlifting can certainly learn from bodybuilders. I feel like some of the bodybuilders that I've seen, they look a bit more chilled than usual, but that's not to say that there's some bodybuilders out there that go crazy. I mean, for God's sake, like on a leg extension, like I've seen people go, come on, one more, like I'm just like, calm the fuck down, man. You're just doing a leg extension. Yeah.
More so, like imagine you're doing a 12 rep set. I can't stand when I see this, like it's pet peeve. Like you're doing a 12 rep set, you're cool. And reps like 2, 3, come on, bro, come on, you got this. Like it is so not needed, bro. Like it is so not needed. I don't need that yet. Save it for later.
So save it for later. But yeah, I would say like the extremes of each end can definitely learn a lot from the positives of each other. So I hope that fucking made sense. But yeah, man, the inverted U theory. I think it's I think the people that wrote it called Yerkes and Dodson. It's a law by them. Check it out. They've used it actually a lot in studies across like multiple sports. Where some have been shown to be like this theory actually works. Some kind of argue against it. But check it out for yourself. I find it quite useful.
Yeah, the bell curve is like a variation of that. But like what's really interesting with like those ones, like the inverted U curve. So imagine that's pretty symmetrical for the audience. Some people are, and you can look at this differently. You could say it's a really weird shaped U where some people need to be more under aroused, some people more over aroused, but really people are just further along the spectrum. So, I mean, like you got the example of like some people, if they're particularly anxious, like they're already like aroused enough. They need to chill out. And then some people just naturally aren't scared of people and are aggressive in nature. Although they might make you think they're over-aroused, they're not fearful of the crowd, they're whatever. They can afford to get amped up more and more. And even like the excessive dopamine actually has a relation to like your strength and acetylcholine and a few other things. So you might see, I think why it became popular, like almost that West Side mentality of like you about to dive into it. And like Chuck Vogelfeld is like that classic example of it. He was like a nutcase. Like you couldn't over-arouse him enough, So I think you type the individual, as you're saying, you just try and get that middle loop. And as you're saying, sometimes these bodybuilders, they've got it right. Yeah. Okay, I guess I'll go through. So what can bodybuilders learn from powerlifters? Look, about 5-10 years ago, you would have said nutrition, wouldn't you? Like, stereotype of like this the out of shape powerlifter. But honestly, people are getting really good with that. Like the powerlifting world's nutrition across like the last few years is just amazing. They can definitely learn a lot from bodybuilders, particularly off season, I believe. So imagine you're again trying to across the year improve your strength, in terms of like your powerlifting performance. Again, we've got a few facets that you got like, the neurological side, over-categorize, I know, and you got the muscle size thing. Rather than try and do both all the way at the same time and all the rest of it, why don't you, again, when you need to have fatigues low when you're peaking, that's putting all the time to gain size. When you can afford to off-season, you're far away and you can transfer it into your strength and peaking later on, that might sound like a good time to try and focus on adding size. Because who cares off-season if, okay, my super specific, low bar 1RM isn't quite as good because I've got a bunch of fatigue there, but I'm gaining size. And when I get rid of things and acclimatize to the new technique, boom, all those same metrics of where I was with my, 4x5 last year, I'm now 15 kilos up on that. And I knew my technique and all this stuff was potentially maxed out. And if it wasn't, well, then you can address that. But if it was, well, what contributed? It's probably the muscle mass. So you look at a lot of like the patterns of bodybuilding training, and sometimes that might not be dive bombing the squat because you get a good rebound. It might mean controlling every inch in the range. Every single training variable that differs. Maybe just go more towards that. Then just give yourself plenty of time to transition it into the super specific strength side and go from there.
And I guess for those other powerlifters out there that are training the like the main lifts all year round, I think bodybuilders out there, like there's they go through a range of exercise selection. I think there's the variations and things like that. I know there's like a lot of smart powerlifters out there that really utilize that further away from competition. But for other powerlifters out there, there's a lot of them that do tend to train those same lifts all year round, just to stay, basically stay comp ready. But take the time and don't shy away from those exercises that might seem like it's all this, why would I do this kind of thing? Because there's still a lot of benefits that can carry over, to your main lifts anyway. So.
Yeah, awesome. And it helps with injury and injury prevention and long-term longevity as well. Like being good at multiple lifts, yeah. We got to wrap this one up, boys.
Actually, I
spoke about it already.
You kind of chatted about it. Yeah.
I spoke about it.
Well, actually, no. We need to finish up on the last thing, which is
That's right.
yeah. How much of the time should you do pure strength training? That's the last question. So I think we're all just staring at each other like, oh, who's the pretty one? No. Look.
You need neck nominate someone.
Well, you know what? How about I start?
How about you do, Nick? How about you do?
How about I do? Okay, so how much time should we do pure strength training? Look, the answer always is it depends, right? If your goal is hypertrophy, what? Is there something you want to say, Prantik?
It depends.
It depends. Oh, I shouldn't actually say that. Whoops. So, yes, if your goal is hypertrophy, like I said before, neurological phases can come in handy when you need to deload from hypertrophy phases. So whether that be, 1 to 3 weeks away from if you're doing metabolic hypertrophy work. And another thing, like I said, for those bodybuilders out there, or even powerlifters, but mainly bodybuilders, if you require improvements to maintain execution at heavier loads, then training your nervous system really comes in handy. So I guess it's like one of those things, it's individualized. Like, there's no real definitive answer. This is the amount that you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some need to do more. Some don't necessarily need to do much. I think, like I said, the main thing is it is if you've been doing a lot of metabolic work, doing a neurological phase can just kind of, like I said, deload you from that stimulus for sure.
So yeah, I think in terms of how much of the time should you do pure strength training? So this is, I guess, strength training for the size person or bodybuilder. You want to make sure if you're looking across a whole year that, what is the approach that will maximize my hypertrophy? And there's the two factors of how much time you're dedicating to it versus, and within that is how much return on investment will you get? So you could find month 1, 2, 3, you're running at 100%, 75, 50%. If the rest of the year you're just running into 25 to 0%, the sum across the year isn't as high as 100, 100, 50, 100, 150, 100, 150. It's about the cumulative thing. That's why, Nick says you can focus on neurological things or just basically backing up training volumes or this or that to invest in future percentages. Even though it's lost time, the sum of the percentages and how much more you get out of it across the other months will more than make up for it. So then you just got to go for needs analysis. Like, do I need more neurological stuff? Do I need just a psychological relief? Like sometimes we gain size and it's like, okay, cool. What can I do with it? Like I don't know if I'm up in body weight and I've eaten more and I'm feeling bigger or whatever. I'm like, okay, I kind of want to see what my squat is. I think we all get that inkling, that urge once in a while. And it's probably better to have a direct phase where you just focus on okay, what the hell can I squat if I just put together some weeks and this and that, directly to it versus, okay, highish volume, YOLO, chuck in a 1RM. Highest volume, YOLO, chuck in a 1RM. And that kind of hurts your hypertrophy training. It definitely hurts the strength number you're expecting. So it's handy in that sense as well to kind of, give it its own block and then you get the best of both worlds to a degree as well.
I mean, if you are maintaining your weight too, if you're going through a maintenance phase, it's, like you said, if you just want to, check out what your squat is or what your deadlift is, it's a good, it's a good time to oh my God, I've just been cutting down all this time or, I've been in a mass gain phase. I've just been doing this, strength training. Yeah. You're doing lower volume of work. Yes. At a higher intensity, but, again, maintenance weight, you could probably see better benefits doing it during then for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I totally assumed when I was speaking before that people might put in a maintenance phase, but I was saying, probably the time to put it is the maintenance phase because in a way you've maintained the muscle during that. So you need to do something, but you don't have to do all the rest of the other stuff with it. So with when you're a bodybuilder and you're doing these, strength-ish based stuff, I think it's probably a good time to have maintenance calories. You're not trying to eat so much because imagine you had a caloric surplus when you're training for size, there's a higher chance that caloric surplus will mean more muscle gain than fat. Because the muscle gain stimulus isn't as high, the caloric surplus will mean a higher chance of fat gain if you're still in caloric surplus while doing strength. On the other side of things, you might not have now the maintenance volumes in terms of like your strength training or this, that, and how it translates to size. It kind of needs to increase to a degree to maintain the anabolic stimulus if you're having a bunch of catabolic stimulus coming in nutritionally, aka a caloric deficit. Basically, people like, trying to, lose fat or whatever, usually they use a muscle building stimulus quite directly because they know, hey, look, I'm going to make sure to signal to my body that what has to come off has got to be fat because what I'm doing is quite muscle building specific and I need those adaptations.
You're right there, Prantik.
Yeah. What I want to say is for a perfect wave to form in which you can surf, you always need the peaks and the troughs. So strength training is something like that. So it also depends on what you want to do, what your target is. You should be definitely periodization is one of the keys. So periodization to strength training is very important. A clear example of this is me right now. I'm trying to boulder. So when I'm trying to boulder, I need a lot of strength in my hands. So if you can see what has happened to my fingers, there's like calluses here that are starting to form because of the strong grip. And I need a lot of flexion and movement as well. So I need explosive strength on my forearms, my arms, and obviously through my back muscles. So the legs are also very important. The core engagement is very, very important. I already have the strength on my legs because I have been squatting a lot. I used to squat a lot. And then that's what I'm going to use for my butt. Probably not as dominant strength in my hands because we are not used to grabbing our whole body weight up with our hands. We're more used to grabbing weights off the floor with our hands. It's kind of similar, but a lot more body parts are involved in it. So now bringing the whole strength of the whole body onto your fingers is a totally different game. And the only thing I realize how to achieve it is like through practice. And it is a kind of strength training in itself where I'm trying to lift my whole body weight just on the basis of the tips of these 3 or 4 fingers, however I involve them. So periodization of strength, I feel like it's very important because I'm doing banded movements alternate days, which also is a kind of periodization where I'm not always hanging on to the bars or anything using my hands, which also gives these fingers some time to the muscles some time to actually regenerate and reprogram itself to better sustain my body weight. So
yeah, yours funny. I think that's almost a perfect example. Your gripping and your bouldering of a time where literally strength and endurance factors would be important, but size after a bit not only wouldn't be more of an advantage, it can almost be a disadvantage.
Disadvantage as well.
For advanced powerlifters, in terms of body weight advanced, you might notice after a while grip becomes more of an issue with their deadlifts. They struggle to hold it. Now, one of the issues is because their hands have got more mass. It's more fat often, but even just more mass in general. Imagine how strong you are doing trying to hold something that's small versus large. It's like why people use fat grips to make it harder on themselves, during training. Their hand, in a sense, is almost like a smaller fat grip. That makes sense. So it's actually harder to hold. So with your demands of things, you need to make sure everything is working as well as it can in almost the smallest formation that is acceptable in terms of the minimum size you need there, but not much more.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my definition of periodization of strength training and how important is strength training according to your requirement. So with that, how anybody else has any other question that is of utter need of answering?
Utter need. I've never.
What do you? Quick! Everyone, give a quick answer. What is some of your favorite methods of strength training? Go. Just quick answer.
Eating.
And then we got to cut this shit out. Oh.
Oh, we meant to answer yet?
Favorite method. Can we just like revisit that? What are your favorite methods of strength training? Eating. Good answer.
Eating.
Yeah. Eating and sleeping. Netflix and food.
Netflix and food.
Yeah.
Nick,
That's how you get strong, bitches.
what's your answer, Nick?
What's my answer?
Is that why you wanted the question to be asked?
To play music. Yeah, just to rock out like a, I don't know, Billy Ray Cyrus song or some shit.
Rock out with your
Mikey breaky heart.
rock out with your
don't.
out. Is it like that?
How's that tied to increasing strength? I'm confused.
No, I was taking the reference of.
No, not you. Just grabbing the guitar.
Oh,
Look, I'm trying to figure that out with your answers. I was like, what are some of your favorite methods of strength training? And then you guys just answer like the completely random shit.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just.
you
Look,
guess
I thought I'd honestly join the party.
You're invited. We'll have a big food thing. If we get to enough subscribers, guys, so guys, please like, share, and subscribe. Another thing is, I'm putting this on the spot. If we get to 10,000 subscribers, we're doing 10,000 calorie food challenge, 3 of us. Ideally in person, that'll be fun, but even if it's across things, I guess at 20,000, I'm doing that as well. 30,000, I might commit to you guys already. I'm making up my mind.
I might be dead.
Hey. Yeah, I know.
I'll do 10,000.
Share.
I'm actually curious. No, this is what I'll do. If it was
20,000
10,000,
would be fun.
I'll do my before and after weight. All right, and then I'll do my before scales and after shit scales weight. All right, I'll let you guys know.
Yo.
I'll be one for record books.
Okay. So
All right,
yes,
that's it.
we had a viable discussion today.
Yeah, no,
I
it's
think
good.
so.
One.
Very nice.
Viable
So,
AF.
All
thank
right.
you everybody for
Cool.
joining us.
Thanks, guys.
This is Forge Intelligence saying goodbye to another week, another episode. Peace out. 8 down.
See you next week, boys.
Bye.
Thank you for watching the Forge podcast. If you enjoyed it, we'd love for you to subscribe. If you want to find out more about us, check the description. And as always, thank you for listening.